I'd like to do some introductions quickly. On the line, we have Dale Newman and Jim Van Hecke, who will be helping take us through the webinar for Dash.
All right, well, good morning, everyone. And we're pleased to be partnering with Positive Vision today to talk about Dash for SYSPRO. Now, I'd like you to introduce you to our panelists today. First up is Jim Van Hecke, the CEO of Dash. Jim, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, good morning. I have been with Dash since Dash's inception in 1998, as a consultant, and then as an owner and a designer and an implementer and all sorts of things. We're a company that develops software and with a particular focus on documents and document automation. Been doing this for a long time and still having lots of fun doing it. So,
thanks, Jim. And I'm Dale Newman. I'm the business development manager here at Dash, working with VARs and end users like yourselves for the last 6 years. Now, today in this presentation, we may take about 40 minutes or so, but we're going to focus on 2 use cases in particular: finance automation for both AP and AR, and the other world of the paperless office and remote work. Today, many companies are prioritizing their digital transformation, especially as we move into this brave new world of distributed work. Now, at the SYSPRO Wave 2019 conference, the featured speaker was Peter Diamandis. He had a very interesting quote that he delivered to us that really fits our conversation today. And it is, there will be 2 kinds of companies at the end of this decade: those who are using AI and digitize, and those who are out of business. That's quite a statement. Today, I will be facilitating the conversation, and primarily it will be Jim talking about what we can do to help finance teams and other teams working with SYSPRO. Here are 5 areas that we hear come up time and time again where Dash can really make a difference. So if you need to automate finance in AP or AR can actually make a big difference too. We have a customer that has been able to actually save $1 million by reducing the accounts receivable days by 30% through greater automation. So it's not just AP where DDX can have a significant benefit. Or if you're tired of those filing cabinets and want to move beyond the filing cabinets, or maybe your employees struggle to work remotely, especially from an approval workflow or document access standpoint. Or if you don't have that secure backup for further critical documents, well, that's a key area for IT. And then those audits can always be challenging every year. I've participated in a number of audits myself. And whether you give the auditors access to DDX to search them by themselves, or if you do it through DDX on behalf of the auditors, you can make life a lot easier by finding those documents and quickly answering those questions that the auditors ask. So these are some of the key areas that you might be thinking or hearing these things of where DDX can really make a difference. Here are some industry proof points. On average, it can cost companies $20 to file a paper document. Gartner research found that professionals working with a lot of paper can spend 50% of their time just looking for information. And sometimes it takes 18 minutes just to locate the right document. Now, I personally know that I've been frustrated many times when I know I've created something and it's really important just how long it can take to find it. On average, it costs American companies $120 to find a misfiled paper document. Lost documents become even more expensive, costing $220 on average to reproduce. Companies misfile about 20% of their documents. And then Citigroup actually conducted an internal research a few years ago that found that if each employee saved just 1 sheet of paper per week, the company could actually save $700,000 per year. So certainly, these are some nice proof points to reinforce some of the challenges that were justifications. So, do you know Dash? Jim, can you tell us a little bit about why you founded Dash some 20 years ago and what was the passion or itch that needed to be addressed that compelled you to drive towards this?
Sure. Dash was founded effectively by a group of programmers who kind of liked the art and engineering aspects involved in solving problems through custom code, really. We came from an ERP company, so we kind of understood the challenges and the roots that drive people to automate and use ERP systems to help manage their businesses. And we used that knowledge along with the passion for programming to start doing custom software back in the late 90s, leading up to the year 2000. Along the way, we knew we wanted to be a software product company as well. And along the way, we started to notice some patterns of some of the requests coming from our customers. And one thing that started to pop out was the need to automate, and we found ourselves with an opportunity to help a number of customers automate the delivery of their documents. So the first thing that ultimately became the core of the product was the delivery of purchase orders, and that expanded into delivering other types of documents, first by fax and then by email, and then distributing them across multiple printers, and then the combination of all of those things. And we decided, as long as we're managing these documents and the way they get delivered, we could also save them and index them and make them easy for people to find. And that was kind of the genesis of the archival portion of the product. As the years rolled on, we added feature and function here and there, like workflow and watermarking and other various things to link documents together and so on and so forth. And we've wound up with the product that we have today known as Dash DDX, which is kind of our flagship product. But we're continuing that automation process in the new things that we're working on, and we'll talk more about some of those things in the future. But we exist to help our customers, who are small and mid-sized manufacturing companies and distribution companies, and augment their ERP system so that you can get more mileage out of the SYSPRO system that you already use. So and extend that investment. That's what we do.
Great. I love hearing that story. Thanks, Jim. So right now, Dash is at about 100 customers within the SYSPRO ecosystem, in addition to other ERPs. But there's a lot of focus by Dash in the development and service team for the SYSPRO ecosystem, where we are readily in contact with the management and alliances teams at SYSPRO, so that we can ensure that we can support the native integration and work seamlessly with SYSPRO. But Dash is evolving too. We're not just focused on document management anymore. From feedback from our customers, we've seen a great need, as Jim just highlighted, around automation, especially looking at key workflows that are repetitive, prone to error, or just take way too long. So this is an area of interest for Dash, and we've seen some great strides here. Now, that is primarily what we will be talking about this morning. This is highlighted or reinforced by one of Dash's customers using SYSPRO, which is Thermo Fisher Scientific. Chris Roberts, who is the IT manager at Thermo Fisher, gave us this great quote. "Don't underestimate Dash. Document management is sometimes only thought of as a repository. Well, Dash is really an automation tool that lets you do more with less." So Jim, I know you work closely with Thermo Fisher. Can you talk a little bit more to their story and how we were able to help Thermo Fisher here?
Sure, it's actually kind of a cool story. The way that it unfolded and the timing of everything was really serendipitous. They started their search because they had a need to replace a lot of the processes that were very paper heavy in their organization. And their first target was to focus on their invoicing process because it was very paper laden, and they wanted to rid themselves of that to try and improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the organization. And if they could do that in the invoicing area, they knew that they could take it elsewhere. So they needed to be able to share documents together. They were printing documents out just to scan them back in so that they could email them, not really the most effective or efficient way of dealing with things, but that's what they were doing. So they started looking at systems that might help us, and they wound up looking at DDX, and they purchased DDX in a factor that loomed large in their decision-making process was that it was pre-integrated with SYSPRO. So it was very easy to use off the shelf for several of the forms that our SYSPRO produces are pre-integrated. And they anticipated that the training was going to be, the installation and the training were going to be very easy and quick to implement. And in fact, in all of those cases, they were. Their timing was also fantastic. I mean, they started this process in late Q4 of 2019 and went live in late January of 2020. Coincidentally, the pandemic hits right about then, and everybody in the office kind of leaves and starts to work remotely. All of the processes and business procedures that they had developed to this point really kind of relied on people being in physical proximity to each other, and that was no longer possible because of the new remote working relationship. So that work from home element then means that the paperless office that they were seeking becomes really, really important, and right now. In the end, they had a pretty smooth transition. Invoices kept flowing despite people working from home for months at a time. They retained all the important records that they needed, and they were easy. They found that it was really easy to share them amongst themselves, even though they weren't physically located in the same place anymore. There just simply were no barriers to that. They would log on to their network over the internet, and it was everything they needed was right there. So they wound up really quickly seeing some benefits. They got some hard benefit immediately, saving on things like postage and paper and labor and other things like that. But they also found that it was really great on the soft benefit side too, because it gave time back to their accounting people so that they could spend more time with their customers and helping their customers out. So in the end, a real success for Thermo Fisher. They have since expanded its use to multiple plants and into other business processes, and they have some great plans for expanding it even further as they move ahead. So they've gotten some serious benefit out of it. It's done the things they anticipated it doing, much, much more.
Thanks, Jim. That's a great story. So next, let's talk about our roadmap going forward. So one of the responsibilities that our marketing department here at Dash has is to reach out to existing customers and get feedback on their business process and how they're using DDX relative to their business process. And also if there are any other areas that we can work on to improve their experience in making a job work more smoothly. And then the tasks that they have to deal with every day work a little bit more efficiently. So one of the things that came out of one of our most recent rounds of customer interviews was very much around finance automation in both AR and AP, but in particularly around AP. Based on customer feedback, we are investing in our product roadmap and AP automation. Jim, would you care to explain on that?
Yeah, sure. We've been doing document automation for many years, but the automation of AP and the AP processes there brings some kind of new and interesting challenges to it. So, our customers told us they want to do more with less. They easier, faster, and better. Those are all kind of the essential priorities in their journey. So, we're sharpening our focus to zero in on more document-related automation. So we're working to enhance our core product, Dash DDX, to assist with that where we can and improve things like workflow and so on and so forth that play a role in that process. Again, make no mistake, we've been in the business of automating document delivery and filing and other things forever, well, over 20 years. But in Q3 and 4 here, we've actually launched an early access program to automate the entry of supplier invoices. So we'll talk a little bit more about how that process works in a few moments, but it's really kind of a cool add-on, and frankly, it's a new product for us that is based on artificial intelligence to extract data from documents, printed pages, PDFs, and so on and so forth, match things with the data in SYSPRO, and then post your invoices for you in an automated fashion. So a lot of labor reduction and improved accuracy there. We're also looking at, after we tackle the PO receipt three-way matching issues, maybe getting into posting to AP registration in SYSPRO for those customers that use it. The jury's out there as to how big a population that is, and that'll make a difference to what we choose to focus on. But we've had some nibbles and some interest there. If that's something that you're interested in, please raise your hand or contact us and let us know. That'll help us choose our future direction here. These automation products that we're working on are intended to substantially reduce our customers' effort when it comes to entering these transactions. It'll improve accuracy along the way as well. And as always, we'll continue to automate the filing and organizing of documents that are related to them, like the purchase orders that go out the door, the receiving documentation, and so on and so forth.
Okay. Well, it seems like there are a number of companies that like to hold on to cash as long as possible and have cash management procedures in place. Through these conversations, we found some common approaches to the customers that are using Dash for SYSPRO in terms of their overall process. Now, we don't think this will be anything of a surprise to any of you, but perhaps, Jim, you could quickly highlight the commonalities that we saw in talking with Dash customers who are using SYSPRO and some of their standard processes that they use with regards to AP. And then on the next slide, we'll show how DDX supports and enhances the processes, especially related to manual workloads.
Sure. One of the things that stood out in those interviews was it kind of helped us reinforce the model we had in our head about what a standard AP process looks like. And certainly there was some input and feedback we got that changed our vision of how we might help in that process as well. But as we talk to a variety of customers, a typical, this may not be your precise process, but a typical framework emerged where a purchasing requisition is created oftentimes that may or may not be using SYSPRO's PO requisition framework. It might be paper, it might be SYSPRO's, might be a mix. Then a purchase order was created, and then sometime later, goods are received on the receiving dock, along with the attendant paperwork that comes with it. Then sometime later still comes the supplier's invoice. Someone needs to match the PO, the receiving information, and the supplier invoice to make sure everything is on target and copacetic, and then a payment occurs. So, using this simple framework as the basis for that AP process, we're able to kind of dig into it and see some places where we can add value to that process. Next slide, please, Dale. So in the middle on this slide is that same process, right? The purchasing requisition, purchase order, receive goods, so on and so forth. And surrounding that, we see some areas where our customers are already using DDX to help manage the documents to support that process and make it flow smoother. So for example, when it comes to purchasing requisitions, for those that are using paper or things outside of the SYSPRO realm, keeping a record of those requisitions and maybe using a workflow process to approve requisitions and then later on approve invoices is a desirable thing to include in their business process. Dash DDX can help with that. As we move further down the process chain, you've got things like the purchase requisition and now the PO and maybe the packing slip or GRN and those types of things, linking those together so that you start to create, you used to use a staple, right? But when you've got electronic documents, linking them together in a way that pulls that packet of information together under one umbrella is something that we can help with too. And that can include all of those things from inception, like the requisition, to the PO, to the packing slip and the GRN, and later on to the invoice. So that when you've received that supplier invoice and you're in the midst of doing your AP posting, entering that invoice into SYSPRO, DDX can now give you, single click access to all the documents that are supporting your decisions there. So if for whatever reason you need to get back to see the receiving documents or the PO, they can be a click away with DDX if you're using DDX as your mechanism to house all those related documents. And then you'll make a payment, and even further on down the road when audits crop up, oftentimes that involves, going and grabbing file boxes or having somebody go fish out all the paperwork related to A, B, or C. We've seen a variety of customers that will sit an auditor down in front of a computer, spend 5 minutes training them on how to seek and locate documents in Dash DDX. And now the auditor can retrieve whatever documents they need whenever they need them without having to expend a lot of effort on the part of other employees trying to go gather them for the auditor. So that could simplify and make the audits easier. So in the end, you wind up with a reduction or no more paper filing or email attachments. Those can all be made electronic, kept in the same place, and linked together with relevant documents. Workflow can help manage and make visible to all the stakeholders the approvals of purchase requisitions and invoices and maybe other things in your organization as well. The auditors can review transactions and the associated documents with ease, and all that data that you're collecting there is securely archived away and protected against disaster and against prying eyes as well. So those are things that we can do today and have with the Dash DDX system. And this is just one example in the realm of accounts payable. There are plenty of other examples that address other business processes as well.
All right. So as we move on to the second use case, we're going to talk about the paperless office. Now you can feel free to comment in the chat section if you'd like. We'd love to hear if this finance automation is something of interest to you, and if the process that we've laid out is similar to your process, or if it's a little different, and if that automation or AP entry would be valuable to you. And if you do have any questions, feel free to mention them in the chat too. We'll make sure we get to them at the end. So when it comes to the paperless office, this is an area that Dash has been very involved with for many years working with SYSPRO. Here on the screen, you can see some of those key areas or those key challenges that companies face. Jim, based on your experience, can you highlight a few of these that really stand out and frustrate companies who are trying to manage their offices a little bit more efficiently when it comes to paper?
Oh, sure. You know, remote work obviously kind of came to a head with the advent of COVID. But you know, it's been an increasing thing over the last several years as technology allows for that sort of thing. And so many companies have built business processes predicated on the assumption that all of the information they need, and much of it in physical form, is going to be, you know, just down the hall or at arm's length, and that's no longer true necessarily. So especially when you're working remotely, so having a lot of the documentation and documents that you work with available electronically becomes increasingly important. So too with workflows, and even when we're working in physical proximity to each other, knowing where a particular document is in its process of being reviewed and or approved can be difficult when it's buried in a stack of stuff on somebody's desk. And the move to paperless allows you to remove that impediment and remove that sort of a friction by making those documents visible to all the stakeholders at any step along the way, if you so choose, and then moving them from place to place without the need to physically move them place to place. That is huge when you're dealing in multi-plant environments or you know, that are maybe even across the street, much less across the country. Getting rid of the friction of moving things and drawing them to people's attention by making them electronic as opposed to physical can be a huge thing. Simple things like eliminating file cabinets and freeing up space for other purposes. I mean, we've got customers that'll send us pictures of the banks of filing cabinets that used to be there that are now replaced by people's desks or other maybe more useful things. So, you know, and even small things like finding documents, being able to search for what you're looking for and find them, you know, in a matter of seconds, as opposed to getting up and going to the filing cabinet, even if it's in my office. That takes far more time, and especially if I'm doing it repetitively. And lastly, all these things are backed up digitally. So, you know, when it comes to protection from disaster, it makes it very easy to restore all of those things, where if we're keeping them in a physical state, they are vulnerable to flood or fire or whatever the case may be.
Jim, did you want to bring up that customer out on the Jersey Shore that found it very convenient to have everything backed up electronically?
Oh yeah, you're not going to let me forget that one. Yeah, we had a customer in Jersey that implemented DDX, and they had been using it for a couple of years, and they've been scanning in some of their old documents, but diligently kind of stopping the leak early in their implementation, so that they're, rather than printing documents out and keeping them physically, they were now keeping them electronically, which takes a lot less time than keeping them physically. But it turned out to be a huge benefit to them, because they got slammed by a hurricane at one point, and they were right on the shore in a harbor where there was some pretty serious flooding, and their office space was just trashed. And it took them several weeks to clean it out and get people back there. So they were working remotely for a little bit, but they were able to take all of the stuff that they had backed up, the SYSPRO data and the documents in DDX, and have that all back up and running, you know, in a day, and accessible to those people that needed to work. So while they suffered a pretty tremendous natural disaster that might have wiped them out had they not been better prepared, they were able to, by virtue of the fact of having good backups and having them accessible, get all of those documents back and all that data back very, very quickly and keep the business running. So God forbid that you should ever experience such a terrible event, but planning ahead can help you weather those hard times. So.
Excellent, thanks, Jim. Now here's a view of DDX that we wanted to at least show you with a screenshot and highlighted with little red bubbles showing some of the key functionalities or areas where DDX actually helps support these two use cases, both finance automation and of course the paperless office. Jim, would you like to take them through that?
Sure. The key here is being, and the gift that keeps on giving really is, how often do I have to go back and look for documents? I may have lots of documents that I never go back and look for, but I am in many professions and functions in an organization, I am retrieving stuff all the time. So the easier we make that, the more benefit you get out of it in the end. And to that end, we've got a couple of different ways of locating things. In the top left, there's a kind of a quick Google-like search where I type in a phrase or a term, and up pops below it the list of documents that match that phrase or term. And when I click on one of them, I see it in the middle of the screen, like that invoice you see there. The other thing that I see when I click on that document is the list of other documents that may be linked to it. So in this case, I clicked at the top on a supplier invoice, but down below or in the middle on the left, I see we've got other documents like a receiver or an AP check or a purchase order all linked to that supplier invoice. So all the relevant documents I need, that packet, if you will, are all available at my fingertips. Just now I just simply need to click on them in order to view them. Down at the bottom, we see all the detail behind those things, all the tags and the keywords that help me, keep all of this chaos organized in some way, shape, or form. It's a supplier invoice for Bicycles Unlimited, so on and so forth. Those are kind of important to me, being able to find them later. But we also see some statistical information like when was this thing captured and by whom. If you're using DDX for workflow, I can also see the current status of this document. This particular one says it's pending review. If I'm using DDX for workflow, you can look over at the far right where I have a list of activities and notes that have occurred related to this particular document. Those activities and notes can be easily added by anybody who has permissions to do so. They're all date and time stamped as to when they were added or when they were changed. They're also digitally signed, so I know who added them and or who changed that particular record. And there can be a status associated with them if I'm using this for workflow purposes. So I can go in and mark something as approved, but when I do, that knowledge of who did that and when is all exposed and public for those that have access to it. Again, it's a secured function, whether you show it or not. And I can attach notes to this thing as well. So if there's other activity or information that's worthy of noting, that can be linked to that particular document so that it's visible and available for anybody who happens to find that document. So this is the tool used most often to find documents, but also then manage them going forward.
Excellent. Well, accounts payable automation. Well, I know in those conversations we had with customers, we've seen the need for helping to automate this process more fully. And now we're looking at taking that one step further. So Jim, why don't you talk about what we're working on for this quarter that I think is close to ready, and then also what we're working on in the next fiscal quarter. Are you muted, Jim?
Yes, I am muted. No, I'm not. This is a pretty cool project we're kind of excited about. and that the bottom line goal is to be able to accept supplier invoices and match them and post them into SYSPRO with no effort whatsoever. That's nirvana. Now imagine the process will look like what you see on the screen. So imagine for a moment I've got 100 invoices from 100 different suppliers. Without training the software at all to recognize different invoices from different suppliers, I scan some in, I get some in electronically from email and so on and so forth, but I drop those 100 invoices into a directory on my network. When I do, a process that we've developed kicks off. It uses artificial intelligence to extract all of the data from those forms, and over time maybe learn to do a better job of that, because it won't be perfect, but it will get better. It will then take the data that it's extracted from each of those individual invoices and validate it against SYSPRO's purchase orders and receipts. Yeah, hang on, Dale, you're getting ahead of me here. Our first target has been chosen to address only invoices that are backed by purchase orders and receipts, because that's where our customers told us they have the most hassle. So if we're trying to save time, we're going to tackle that area first, and we will probably at some future point tackle non-PO related invoices like MRO items or utilities and things like that. So I've taken the 100 in, I've gone through and I've validated them in SYSPRO, and let's say 90 or 95 of those initial 100, they all match up and everything's fine. The quantities match, the dollar values match. I'm good to go. It will just post them to SYSPRO without me ever having to look at them. Oh, by the way, if you're a DDX user, it will also take copies of those invoices and save them into DDX for me, so I don't have to do anything else with them. Now, there will be exceptions in this process where, for whatever reason, the AI maybe misinterpreted some of the data that's on the page, or it interpreted it correctly, but it doesn't match my PO or my receipt. I'm going to take those things, I'm going to set them aside, I'm going to give the user an ability to see those exceptions, correct those exceptions, and then post to DDX and to SYSPRO. So, you know, I dropped 100 in, maybe I've got 5 or 10 exceptions out of that 100 that I need to poke at manually myself, and then put them away. And the good news is, even on the exceptions, we've captured a lot of the data already, so there's really no need for the human to type everything in. It can be captured directly off of that form. So this thing is, again, based on artificial intelligence and machine learning, supplied by Microsoft Azure. It will work with DDX as its ultimate repository for the actual invoice document, or it will work standalone. So if you're interested in this and you don't have DDX, you can use it. If you do have DDX or you want both, you can use it, and they will work together as well. Again, we're focusing on that three-way match as our phase 1 objective, and just those things that require a three-way match, and in future we'll expand that a little bit. The other thing we're looking at in future, Dale, you can click, is expanding it to use DDX as a part of the workflow. So we may go up to the point of validating things, but then stop and require a workflow approval process before things will actually get posted to SYSPRO. That workflow process will take place in DDX itself. So exciting stuff. And we're at a point right now where we have this thing out being used by a couple of early adopters, and we're seeking a couple more. We are using their experiences and their feedback to round the product out and to make sure it does what it needs to do and does it well. And as soon as that those results all come back and look good, it will be available for general consumption. We hope that will take place probably in Q4. So next. Remember, I mentioned that there will be exceptions that a person needs to look at and manage. The screen you're looking at right now is that screen that will that you'll work with on just the exceptions, right? Not everything needs to be reviewed visually. The goal is automation, right? So for those invoices you have that can be automated, we'll do that, but exceptions will show up as a little list over in the left. Next, Dale. You'll be able to, when you click on that exception, you'll see the document visually on the right, and you'll also see the extracted header and footer information, like what's the invoice number, the PO number, so on and so forth. In the middle there, we'll also pull the invoice date and invoice amounts and freight and so on, and tax, etc. And when there are problems, we'll try and highlight them, like the invoice amount that you see there lit up in red tells me that didn't, this is one of our tests where the totaling of the extended price didn't equal the invoice amount as it was sent to me from the vendor. So problem on their end, but you can correct that there. Down at the bottom, you'll see all of the extracted line item information. And again, we're trying to highlight things where the matching process and everything else went well and where it didn't. So if you look at the left, there's these little icons there indicating, first 3 lines, all green check marked, everything looked good. But the last one, maybe not so much. There's a problem here we need to look into. And if you look a couple columns to the right at the receipt column, you'll see, well, I've got one GRN matched up with each of the 3 first lines, but none of them on the last line. So the user would need to drill into this, select from a list of GRNs that are out there, unused GRNs, and then match that up with the line, and then they could correct that problem. Click one more button and it's posted. So when you are investigating those kinds of problems, again, we're trying to make this as interactive as possible so that when you click on that line down below, it will literally highlight or like put a box around the line item on the invoice on the appropriate page of that invoice as well. So we're trying to make this a very interactive thing. Grab and use as much data off the printed form as we possibly can. And when you need to poke at these few exceptions, we'll try to draw your eye to the exception very quickly and then correlate that data with where it came from on the form itself. Again, all aimed at improving the accuracy and speeding up the process to reduce labor.
And it's making it all really user-friendly. And definitely a significant step forward in reducing even more paper and getting more data into the system, reducing errors, reducing time involved, and just making it easier to do those 3-way matches, and not having to spend all that time hunting around for supporting documents or worrying about the approval process. So that's a great update. Well, thank you for that overview, Jim. Now, here's another quote from Rolls, who manufactures batteries. They're out of Canada on the East Coast. And this is from JD Surratt, the COO of Surratt Battery, associated with Rolls. And he says, the biggest benefit is you're able to find things. It's easy when auditors come in because we tag things right. Then when the auditor is wanting to look at all your lawyer invoices, you tag it with the word lawyer, and all of those come up. So that's beautiful. And so JD is definitely a big fan. And they were actually able to get rid of all of their filing cabinets as well. Now, from an approval standpoint, he's able to review requests from the road as well, because he travels quite a lot. So we're really appreciative of your taking the time to join us today and hear a little bit more about DDX and how we're moving forward with finance automation. So as we wrap up here, feel free to enter some questions into the chat, or let us or Positive Vision know about anything else here, if it made sense or if it didn't. We really appreciate the partnership with Positive Vision and look forward to working with you and supporting you. Jim, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, have we got any questions, Dale?
I have a couple that have come in. One was, can DDX handle partial and multiple shipments against one PO and link all the documents together?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's easy to do using the linking feature. And if we're talking about the AP automation, absolutely, it can match with multiple receipts if that's what you choose to do.
Okay. Another one I see here is, what if there are more than one invoice under one PO? Will that invoice pick a part of that PO?
Yeah, partial shipments are also supported. Again, we're talking about the AP automation side, presumably. So absolutely, partials are supported. The auto match, when you've got an invoice and you want it to automatically match up to a receipt, requires that the quantity of the receipt or the quantity of, maybe if there's more than one receipt, those quantities total to exactly what's on the invoice. If they don't, we don't want the software automatically choosing the wrong stuff. So we're going to ask a person to validate that. And that is all within some user-defined tolerances as well.
All right. And then, is there any way to delete or fix a document that got put into DDX incorrectly?
Oh, sure. If a user has administrative privileges, there's a couple of different levels of that can allow you to just simply correct keywords that might have been misentered or captured incorrectly. You can resolve that, or you can delete and remove a document permanently from the archive. But again, those are secured functions. Those are not things that are available without somebody overtly granting that kind of an access to an individual.
Gotcha. Were there any other questions that came in at Positive Vision?
Nope, I'm not seeing any new questions.
All right. Well, we want to thank everyone again for taking the time to join us today for a little over 45 minutes and learn a little bit more about Dash. We would like to thank Nicole and the team from Positive Vision for hosting this webinar, and say thank you to Jim for the presentation. And we look forward to more conversation. So all of you have an amazing day and great week. We look forward to next steps. We'll talk to everybody soon.
Thanks, folks. You have a good day.